Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Book Show, episode 519. I'm Brian Cohen from Best Page Forward, joined by our guest co-host for the next 2 weeks, Kirsten Oliphant. Oh my gosh. So, very successful romance author, formerly very successful teacher person, but got too successful with her wonderful books that she had to scale back on that. She is from the Create If Writing Facebook group, and she writes Emma St. Clair, wonderful romance books. Hey, Kirsten, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. It's good to be here. 519. That number is huge.
It's
Congratulations. It's
huge.
huge.
It's huge. And you have been a part of the show before. You helped with show notes a million years
Yes,
ago.
back in the day.
You were at our first when me and former co-host Jim Kukral were live in Austin. You were there, so you've
Yeah,
you've you've been a part of this show for quite some time.
mostly in the background. So now it feels like a big, I get to be here now. It's fun. Love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, I was so glad you said you could come. I uh always really value your opinions about the industry. You can't stop yourself, despite the fact that you should, totally focus all in on your fiction. You can't stop yourself because you're like me. You like helping people, and you want your fellow authors to be informed and successful.
Yeah, it's true. I do love teaching. And it's funny because as you're saying, I did really stop doing a lot of the teaching and coaching to scale up, but also I realized in the last year I have ADHD. Surprise, mid 40s, new things to learn.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, it's very interesting how every 4 years I changed what I did in my career. Now this makes
Hmm.
sense. So I'm like, oh, wait, we're coming up on year 4 with romance, but this pays the bills now. So,
Yeah.
we're sticking with this for now. I say for
Yeah,
now.
it's fun when you like having been doing this show for next week is 10 years. So 10 freaking years doing this show and seeing how everyone has changed, people who've guest hosted. I mean, we had in year 1 we had Hugh Howey guest host, and now of course his books have been adapted into an Apple TV Plus show. We had Joanna Penn back in the day. She's still crushing it. We've had amazing people. Monica Leonel, who just did the Future of Publishing Summit. I mean, it's been great to see the industry evolve, and
Mhm.
authors do, like we'll talk in these next couple weeks about a lot of interesting things that authors are doing, but things change, they stay the same. It's it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how things move forward and change, but then they also seem to come full circle.
Oh
In
yeah.
certain ways, I come back to I was just on the Wish I'd Known Them podcast, and it was my second
Yeah.
time I was on there their first season. And so I went back and listened to my episode, and I was like, everything has changed, and I'm still learning that same wrong lesson again. like
Hmm.
and so a lot of things change, like little things, but some of the big things are kind of evergreen, which is nice. But it does feel like a very moving target sometimes.
Yeah.
Industry
Yeah.
when certain things just change. But I think a lot of the online spaces, I used to be a blogger, big into food blogging, and
Mhm.
I'm still in those groups. And one of those groups was just lamenting on, Google changed something and all of them had their income slashed in half. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's like me with Amazon's categories in
Yeah.
2023, and how that, you just have these external things. But I could go on.
Yeah.
I will stop now. But
No, it's good because you having that background, because I also came from kind of an SEO background at
yeah.
first, and it was so helpful to know when, like, oh, this thing's happening. That's just like the great SEO famine of 2005 or whatever. You just
Yes.
know. You just know that these patterns are gonna keep repeating themselves.
Yes. The only constant is the change.
Yes,
But there are some
exactly.
constants too. But
Yeah, yeah. And those constants.
and what other
And
constants?
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm really excited that you're here this week. We are going to talk about some other stuff you've got going on. You're going to be speaking at Elena Johnson's event in March and April and May, so that's exciting. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. I've got a webinar on Thursday that people should check out, how to write a new series that sells. It's a sneaky backdoor not saying writing to market while saying writing to market kind of way, because writing to market is how to write a new series that sells. But I'm really excited to talk about that on Thursday. There's going to be a link on the website, so go check that out. And yeah, let's look at the previous week's question, which I might have to ask you too, Kirsten, because, it's a good one. So when and how do you decide to pivot from something that has changed in the author world? Dharma Keller said, I spent much of 2023 trying to generate retailer sales with free first in series and paid promo newsletters, but try as I might, I couldn't make it work. At 20 books, I realized I needed a major course change. I'd been playing small. I needed to spend time mapping out how I wanted to build relationships with readers, and I needed to focus on direct sales. It's early March, and I've already made more revenue than I made in all of 2023. That is a good sign. Kirsten, second comment to you.
Margarita Macedo said, still unable to tell when to give up or when to push through, be it with the author social pages, Amazon ads, or the whole self-publishing all together. Maybe it's just not for me, with a little shruggy emoji.
Oh, well, I mean, I think Margarita, and really anyone, because I'm sure you've heard that sort of
just
phrase
today
before.
In a Facebook group, I saw somebody posting this, like, why am I doing this? Like, should I keep doing this?
Yeah. And I think this is something I've been talking about a lot lately in my classes. I think that we need to rethink marketing, and we need to stop thinking that, oh, I have to do this because this person is doing well at it. Oh, I have to do this because someone's taking a course on it or teaching a course on it. I think that anything that sells books counts as marketing. And I think there is a skill that everyone has that would help them with a thing that would help them sell books, but it might not be the popular thing. It might not be the fancy new thing. There is something, but it's not easy when there's this sea of ideas that might not be a good individualized fit for authors.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think there are so many options now that there's that whole decision fatigue and overwhelm. And in some ways, you have to test things to see what you like and what works for your genre and for your specific books. Because even within a genre, like I've seen some things work for other authors in my genre that don't work for me. Right. But if you don't test, you don't know. And then how long do you test? What does that look like? And how much money and time can you waste on those tests before, and depending, like you could hire 2 different coaches and they'd say 2 different things, or ask in a Facebook group and you'll get 20 answers. So then you have the overwhelm. And that's where I see a lot of people just kind of give up, because they're like, this person says direct sales, this person's in KU, this person says ads, this person's organic sales, and they're all making money. So who do I listen to? And I'll just give up. And I do see that, because it is there is a lot of overwhelm, because there are so many options that can work. And how do you know which one works for you? So
right. It's tough. And I think my answer to that right now is follow the love. What brings you joy? What that you've tried has brought you joy.
Yeah.
And follow up with that, because maybe you just didn't quite get all the way there, but the fact that you enjoyed it might actually help you to keep doing it in the long term.
Yeah. And I think for me, a lot of it is that, because I think that's so important. You're not going to keep doing something you don't like.
Yeah.
And I always say that with social media, like people are like, where should I be? I'm like, what do you like? What do you hate? Because I can make myself do things I hate, TikTok, but I want to be on Instagram. And so that's where, and not just because it's worked well, but I like it. But for me also, it's, a good book is a classic, because you can sell it now and you can sell it 10 years from now. And so taking the time, and good is such a relative term. I don't just mean like literary good, good story, good character, the things that readers want. And so to me, that's like the classic, because that's not going to change. Some trends change, sure, but a book that has characters and stories that appeal to readers, those are classic things. So
yeah. Can't skip that part.
Yeah. Not that any of us would, but I think sometimes,
of
we
course,
forget that, all the marketing, and we forget, like, start with the book,
Exactly. 100%. All right. Well, you can answer the question of the week, folks, over at sellmorebookshow.com or in the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. Let's go into the top story of the week, an audible gasp, which is a great title, Roland. Way to go. Remember Brandon Sanderson's record-breaking Kickstarter campaign? Remember when he decided not to publish his audiobooks to Audible because of how they treat authors? Well, reports Jane Friedman in the hot sheet, it turns out that Sanderson was able to bring Audible to the table to negotiate new terms, not just for him, but for all self-publishing authors, end quote. The final details aren't published yet, but here's what Sanderson has been allowed to reveal. Audible is committing to greater transparency in how authors are paid in regards to spent credits and purchases. New minimum royalties will be established, but audiobooks that are exclusive will continue to get the best percentages. In addition, authors will be paid monthly instead of quarterly as they are now. While Sanderson counts this as a win, he also says that there's more work to do. This new structure doesn't give everything I've wanted, says Sanderson, but it is encouraging. They showed me my new minimum royalty rates for authors, and they are, as per my suggestions, improved over the previous ones, end quote. Sanderson didn't get authors the 70% royalty that many other digital creators, such as video games and ebooks, earn, but he is pleased with the progress made. Quote, this deal is a step forward and is an attempt to meet me partway. Indeed, even incremental changes can mean a lot. Thank you to Blaine Moore for the tip on this one. Kirsten, Sanderson, he went to bat for us indies. Good things happen. What were your first thoughts after hearing this?
I love this. I mean, I saw the for anyone who doesn't have the paid subscription to the hot sheet, there's a he had an article that you can read for free that has some of this info. Although I love Jane's takes on everything.
Yeah.
But I was really excited. I mean, it's so nice to see people who have found success and don't just sit up in their like lofty tower, like I found success, here I am in my tower. But he's like, he is going to bat for us. And there are very few people also that have that power. I mean, the Brandon Sanderson power. So I love that he did that. And I think improvement is key. I mean, I think it's going to be very hard to get what everyone would want from Audible / Amazon, but I think this is a great improvement. I mean, just to see something change.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Sanderson's Kickstarter had not been as successful as it was, if he had not gotten as much media attention as he had, I mean, he already had a platform, but he had a platform where every publishing company and every big time author and every indie author was paying attention. And on that platform, he said, Audible, you have to do better. And as a result, look, I mean, you've heard as well as I have with Spotify and Findaway Voices, one of Audible's biggest potential competitors shot themselves in the foot with, terms and conditions craziness. And so despite the fact that now they have no competitors, basically, they could do anything they want, but they didn't like the bad press and they didn't like that Sanderson said no to them. So they came to the plate and made a change, even though it is not advantageous from Amazon on a short-term profit perspective, but it is probably better for them in the long term, which is funny because they were only focused on the short term. And now Sanderson has actually done something for them that probably is going to be better for Audible in the long term, even if they didn't think that to begin with, probably.
Yeah, it's just so hard. Audio is one of those things, like whenever people ask, in my group or wherever, like especially newer authors about audio, I just have to watch out that I'm not too doom and gloom because I feel like we're so spoiled. Although I don't think it's spoiled, I think it's deserved, right? We work really hard for our ebooks to get the 70% royalty, and your cost consists of a cover, an editor, like
Right.
marketing. But for audio, I had a complete disaster in the fall, and I've been doing, audio for a long time, but
Yeah.
I had a complete disaster and lost a whole bunch of money. And at one day, I'll earn it back,
Yeah.
but we pay more and get less and have less control. And so it's very frustrating, especially if you have the indie author mindset where we're in control of everything, or not everything, but a lot. And we have these
Right.
good percentages. So then to have audio be so expensive to produce. And also, if you don't produce, like I've worked a lot with Podium, which I mean, they're fantastic, but I have mixed feelings about owning your own stuff versus not. In all those contracts, like any audiobook company, Podium, Dreamscape, they want 7 to 10 year contracts. And you're like, so, you and I met 7 years ago, things were really different. What's going to be the next 7 years? So signing away, your rights or even exclusivity to Audible, which I know you can, ask now to get out of, but like technically their full term is long. So audio just feels like one of those situations where it can feel a little lose-lose. And, but it's great. And I just sort of feel like at this point, have the attitude like, I'm going to do it. It's not going to be what I want. And so I'm going to make the best choice, kind of thinking of now, but also thinking long term. I'm just going to make the best choice I can and try not to get too mad about it because I will.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it. So I love that this is an improvement. I know people will still rant and rave because they did even, with the Spotify Find a Way when they updated the terms, and a lot of people like, yay, we won. And a lot of people like, oh, you're not paying attention. You didn't win. So I even saw a bunch of negativity. So I'm sure some people will be like, this isn't enough. And no, it's not, but it's something. And for a long time, we've had very little. I mean, they made the changes about returns, but that was really under threat of lawsuit, I think.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's very possible that was the reason they made that change.
Yeah. So I'll take the bones they throw me because I don't think we have a ton of choices. Now, does that mean I would rather be wide and also own all my own audio stuff and do it myself? Yes. But that's not always the choice I make because, Podium's been good to me. And right now I don't have the energy or bandwidth to do a lot of the audio, production in terms of hiring and dealing with the narrators myself and losing money like I did in the fall when I had a narrator record the whole thing and then flake out and not. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry that
okay.
happened. Let's get a hot potato wisdom question in here. I'm going to have to pivot it slightly because I feel like you already answered this. But like, I mean, what do you think authors are going to rant and rave about still? Like they got better royalties, but what will authors say still needs to change?
I think pricing our own books is one. Like I still don't think that's an option, and I think that's pretty frustrating. And I think about like the 3 sort of P's that were missing for me in this: the pricing control, promotion. Like unless you're exclusive, I think you still don't get codes for Audible, which means that your reviews, you can't have people review without, like you could ebooks, like people can review even if they get an ARC somewhere, but they can't with Audible. And then production, like I have, and this is my own personal, but I would like to see on the back end, if you're paying a narrator per finished hour instead of royalty share, you still don't have the control. And so I've had the worst case scenarios. One of my narrators ghosted. Like, I really don't know. Maybe he died. He's just gone. You cannot email him, anything else. And there was a mistake that was made. And because he was the producer I hired, even though he was fully paid, they wouldn't let me fix it. It was my audiobook. I paid for it and he was gone. So we had to completely take the book down, lose all my reviews, which they wouldn't restore, and then re-record. And I'm like, I own this. So I feel like that's a small back end thing not a lot of people think about until you have that happen, where you're like, oh, I can't control my own files. Even though I paid the narrator and that relationship's done, it's not royalty. So for me, I think, and then the transparency, sometimes I think it's still hard to tell what you're getting if someone borrows an Audible, so or not borrows, but purchases through their Audible credit versus paying outright. So I expect all those complaints.
Those are good complaints for them to have. I think you've got a hot potato wisdom question for me.
Okay, so what additional changes do you think Audible should enact to make things fair for authors?
So I think Audible needs to put more people on this. They need more. They need more of a workforce. There's a couple of issues. It still takes way too long for these books to pass through quality control. And it seems like they've gotten through some of the huge backlog they have, but it's still too long. Secondly, it is still a problem where people are producing audiobooks on other people's books without their permission. People are still doing this, and it's because they chose to make it so automated, so it was easy to publish the books, but they didn't protect the gamification and people just trying to scam it. And so they need, and I know Amazon, you want to make as much money as possible, but you need more humans. You need more humans top to bottom, because the bots just aren't doing their job.
No, they're not. And that actually happened to me. A narrator contacted me and they were like, I applied to narrate your audiobook. And I was like, I didn't ask for any applications for this. And somebody had claimed my audiobook and was asking for narrators. Like they were all the way to the point of having all these auditions. And I'm like, how is that a thing? On Author Central or anything else, you have to like have that connection to your account. And here it's like any old rando could go claim your book and hire narrators. So that's nuts to me.
Yeah. More humans. More humans. We're going into the lightning round, Kirsten, which means it is our official time for our guest co-host to make a lightning sound. So, that was good.
Sounds more like a cymbal crashing.
That was good. No, well, if a lightning bolt hit a cymbal, I think that's exactly how.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, no, so that's perfect. Okay, so we haven't talked about this, but obviously there's a lot of talk in the news right now about TikTok being banned. It's still in the process in our, legislative system. But how likely do you think it is that TikTok will be banned or sold?
I am somewhere in the middle because I could see it happening. I mean, I've heard different reasons for it, and I think that's kind of what it comes down to. I've heard there's financial motivation, and as long as they kind of like manage that side of who really owns it, it will stick around. And also it has to get voted through, and can our government do anything? That's a whole other topic. And agree. Yeah. So I think, I could see it happening. It's further than it was, and this has been a rumor for years. But at the same time, I think it has some easy fixes that, this might be a pressure point to just get a few things changed. Like we're serious about it. And so if they change those things, that's at least what the talking heads I kind of scanned through have said. So
same. I think we've watched a few of the same talking heads, but
so we probably have.
yeah. But okay, question from you to me.
Yes. How can authors doing well on TikTok prepare for the possible banning of the platform?
If TikTok might be banned at some point in the future, you should consider doing what I've always recommended with social media, and I know that Kirsten has too. Get them to your email list. Get them to a place where you can control, because if something happened overnight and one of these platforms changes significantly and you can't reach those people anymore, then you will have wished you would have had a way to reach them. Email is one of the best ways to do that.
Agreed. Yeah.
Awesome. So I already brought this up that you're speaking at Elena Johnson's Indie Inspiration Con on simplifying your socials. What do you think is the first step of simplifying your socials?
I think for people like beyond just the basics of like picking a place first and starting there, especially a place that you like or have an affinity to. I think after that, like I always encourage people to think of like, and this is kind of a tip I got from, she doesn't have her podcast anymore, so I won't mention it, but she coming up with like 3 to 5 things that you talk about that aren't just your books. And so, for example, a random one that's become big for me is raccoons, which came from one of my books I co-wrote with Jenny Proctor. And so something that's an easy, tangible thing that's low risk for people to talk to you about. So never a day goes by in my Facebook group where someone doesn't share, if it's not raccoons, it's alligators, because I love alligators, shares raccoon videos, alligator videos. I thought of you. They're thinking of me when they see alligators because I've made that a thing. And so even though we want to stick to like our book stuff, if you have some easy things like Mean Girls quotes, that's another one, like certain things that people can attach to that they might relate to, and then they'll think about, and there's no real risk for them to discuss like silly raccoon, videos in a group. Whereas you might not want to discuss like even things like your reading habits might be like a little personal, although that's kind of baseline. So coming up with a few things that you like to talk about and kind of keeping within that little circle, but making some of them things that people will associate with you that are easy topics for them.
I love that. My ad school group, our mascot is the Zen lemur, one of those lemurs in the meditative pose,
I
because
love it.
good Amazon ads come to those who wait. And I've done the lemur onesie. We have people sharing the lemur videos, and
Perfect.
so that's really awesome that you have the raccoons and the alligators.
Yes,
That is
I love those.
fantastic. Uh,
Kind of a strange mix, but
yeah, that's okay. That's okay. All right, question from you to me.
when should authors consider spending money on advertising?
So this answer is a little different than it used to be. So when should you spend money on advertising? I am obsessed right now with authors not wasting time in their businesses. I think too many authors have this plan of this 10-book series, and they put out book 1 and it didn't sell that well, and they're like, well, I've got 9 more to write. And that could help, but it also could be helpful to start running some basic ads to that first book. Can it be profitable with advertising just with that first book? And if the answer is, wow, I got 100 clicks and 1 person bought, that is something to really think about. Do you truly want to spend the next 3 years of your life writing 10 books in that series that might not sell well? Or do you want to use the data from the ads to help you determine, oh, maybe this is a duology, end it in 2, and then move on to something else so that you have a better chance of financial success?
That's great.
And
I
it
don't like
used to
wasting
be,
time or money.
yeah,
So
I
both of
used
those,
to
that
be in the
conversation.
like, you need, like, wait till 3 books. But now I'm like, no, just figure it out now.
Yeah. And I do think that like 3 books can help you make more money.
Yes.
But if your first book isn't selling, why would you write even 2 to 3 more versus 10? But any of them, like, why would you write more if you're not? But it's hard then because you're like, well, but why didn't it hit? Because of visibility. But that's where the low cost ads come in, helping the
Yes.
visibility to see if it's not a visibility problem, then it's a different problem we need to address before you write
Yes.
9 more books.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I loved that. I'm like, feel like I need to write that down. If it's not a visibility problem, that's really good. Okay, last question. And we talked about this a little bit. You focused a lot more of your time on writing than teaching lately. But what's a lesson you would teach authors if you had more time for teaching? What do you think you would focus on?
I think I would focus on, and I touched on this before, but kind of the evergreen of writing a story,
Mm,
writing. And I don't like to teach craft a lot because it is subjective. And I tend to be an instinctual learner.
hmm
And so like intuitive, as Becca Syme would call it.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time teaching writing to some degree because I have to be like, wait, what did I do here? Because it does come incredibly naturally for me. I mean, I wrote a book when I was in 3rd grade, my first one, and it was terrible. I found it recently. But I had dialogue and dialogue tags correct, because I read so much and then it just, came out.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not always, I come from an academic background because I have a master's. And so it can be frustrating to me sometimes when you see the books that do really well that have poor things like sentence structure or paragraph structure, or, some of those things I'm like, ugh. But what is it, humans, we're wired for story. And so the story and the characters that really resonate. And I think it's hard because it's still a subjective. And I think so many people really do think they've written that book. And then it doesn't sell because it isn't that book. And that is a hard thing because one of the things I hated about coaching was when I had my basic service was like, why is my book not selling? And I would just
Yeah.
look at their Amazon page. I'd do the look inside, look at the reviews, look at, all the information. There's a ton of information on there. But a lot of times my answer was it's the book. And nobody wants that because the book's published.
Yeah.
And I hated that because I was like, you just paid me. I know you just wanted a cover change, but I'm like, it's the book. And so trying to write things that resonate with readers. And so that's the stories and characters that resonate with readers. Because I just think that is, again, an evergreen thing. So if you don't have money for ads now, that's fine. But when you have money for ads, it's going to come back to you because your book is a solid product.
I love that. Yeah, and we've run into that with our students too, and which is why we've really pushed learning about researching how to write a new series, learning how to get closer to resonating. I mean, the thing we're talking about a lot is well, can you get 20 to 30% closer to what readers expect on the next series? And then another 20 to 30% and keep getting closer without being like, well, maybe let's put a dragon in it. And it's like, well, are there dragons expected in this rom-com universe? That
maybe that's the next thing, is the dragon rom-coms next year.
Dragon rom-coms, I hope.
But I love, if anyone hasn't been to any of your trainings, like I've been to a bunch of your trainings over time. Sometimes I'm in there lurking, but like you do such a good job of actually teaching lessons. I remember the very first webinar I went to, and I didn't know how they worked because I hadn't studied the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah.
And I was in there listening and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I realized I've been listening to a sales pitch for 30 minutes. And I was so mad. I like turned it off, unfollowed the person. And then I realized that's how most people do it. But I don't feel like your trainings are, even the ones where you are pitching something, they're never like that. Like there's so much good content.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's not a secret sales. You're going to get good information with your teaching. So
yeah, I got mad at those kind of ones that were just, have you ever thought about how? And it's like, oh, I'm obsessed with, if there's going to be a webinar with a pitch, there needs to be 50 minutes to 60 minutes of lessons someone could actually apply, even if they didn't buy the thing.
Right. And this was one of those, they used to do this where they slid into the sales pitch. So I didn't realize at first that's what it was. And I kept waiting for the information. And I forgot, I didn't just unfollow the person. I erased them from my mind because I don't remember who, but it was one of those ones. You probably went to one. It was like one of those people that was around 7 years ago who was like all the webinars, and everybody went to them. And like, I didn't know there would be replays. Like I set a calendar and I was like, I can't talk to anyone for this hour.
Those were the days. Those were the days.
They weren't the days. We're smarter now.
No, I'm so glad we're smarter. It's awesome. You know, you give such good information in your group, your Create If writing group, and I love giving great information. And every year the information bar goes up, which I love because it means that people won't listen to bad advice as much.
Yeah, you hope.
You hope. I'm a very hopeful person. We need a question of the week here, Kirsten. We obviously could ask people like what ACX, what Audible features do they want, but we don't have to talk about that. We can also ask about like any of these other questions, anything you specifically would love to get people's opinions on. You're the guest. What do you think?
I really like, this is kind of a combo, but kind of thinking about the idea of like, so if TikTok's banned, and maybe some of the people don't use that, but like, what are some of the things that you're doing to sort of like, I used to talk about like algorithm proofing, which really is code for everything changing in your industry, proofing your author business. Like, what are some of the things that you're doing that have like sort of that evergreen impact to kind of be prepared for the TikTok dying or Google changing their whatever they call it. I've forgotten all my SEO terms, but whenever they do their updates, I'm like, I don't know I know just enough now to be somewhat dangerous.
Yeah,
but
no,
what
I
are people
remember.
doing to evergreen, their author business?
I love that. So what are some of the things you're doing to evergreen and future-proof your author business? Great question there. You can answer on the Sell More Book Show after party or at sellmorebookshow.com. Kirsten, this has been great. We're going to get to spend another episode together, another week together, which I'm excited about. So where should people find your awesome writing advice and your wonderful fiction books?
Yeah, so all the writing advice is at createifwriting.com. And there's still tons of content that's very relevant. Some of the oldest stuff is probably outdated, but there are some definitely, a lot of it is sort of evergreen. And then my fiction books are just at emmastclair.com. I'm all over the place.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, I've loved having you here. This has been wonderful. And next week, 10-year anniversary.
I'm so excited to be on for that. So yay.
Yeah, I'm excited too. But go check out my webinar. Link will be in the, on the website or what have you. Go check out Kirsten's books and her group. For Kirsten, I'm Brian. Have a great week of book selling, everybody. And we'll be back for episode 520. See you then, everyone. Bye.
Bye.